Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is that you're watching this. As you can see on the screen, we have another guest for our And Me series, and it's Alan Tait, a well-kent face around Edinburgh, the Lothians, and the rest of Scotland. Alan, you're a regional director of golfing, you're a PGA professional, you're an after-dinner speaker and host, and an on-course commentator for BBC. That's what it says on Twitter, so I'm believing it. I'm going to ask you a few questions, Alan, but before we get into the body of the questions, I've just got to ask you one thing. You played in the Pro-Am last year at Brunsfield, and it was our course opening Pro-Am. Just tell us what you think of the changes.
They're sensational, Richard. I live down in Leith, and regularly I'm driving along Gamekeepers Road, and when the changes were going on, I regularly parked the car during the winter and went and had a look at the changes. So I've watched the development of it as it's happened, and I always thought Brunsfield was a great course anyway, and it was a good test of golf. But the changes are fantastic, and ironically, played in last year, Brunsfield was my worst score. So I think that tells it all. But I think it's fantastic. I mean, the first, you better not go to that first tee having not warmed up, or go there with a slight hangover from the night before, because you're in for a bit of a fright. But the changes are absolutely sensational. For me, arguably the best golf course in Edinburgh now by a wee bit, I think.
Good.
Just my opinion, of course.
That's amazing for you to see these things. The members will be delighted for that, because I think they would agree, because most of the feedback we get is very, very positive. So let's get into the questions. So Alan, tell me a little bit about you as when you were growing up as a boy, how you got into golf, and who introduced you to it, and where that took you.
Yeah, well, my mum and dad played golf, as did my big brother, Richard. I have an older sister, but she doesn't play. And I grew up in Irvine in Ayrshire. And mum and dad, although they weren't great golfers, they enjoyed their golf. So they would regularly take me out as a wee boy, 5, 6-year-old, Irvine Bogside, where I would really just sit in the back of my dad's trolley and go around with them, because mum and dad couldn't get a babysitter. So I was taken to the golf course. And naturally, through time, my dad started giving me the odd wee shot, and I would hit a shot onto the green. And not long after that, I very much got the bug for the game, and it's how I got into it.
You were obviously, I mean, you did very, very well as a boy. You were the Scottish Boys champion, you were the European and World Junior champion. Just quickly tell us a little bit about what happened with these events and who was in and around events supporting you there.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I hit sort of early teens, my first love was football, and it really got to a stage where I was getting really quite good at the football. I had an S form with Ayr United, and Dundee United were actually looking at me. But when it started coming the weekend, when I was 13, 14, 15-year-old, I really had to choose between golf and football, and obviously I chose golf, and certainly the highlight of my junior career for me was winning the Scottish Boys at Dunbar in 1986, and I was a rank outsider going into that event. I was playing off 4, and I think 5s got balloted out, so I'd really just scraped into the event, to be honest with you. And there was a lot of great players at the time, Ewan McIntosh, Stuart Bannerman. These guys were all playing off +2. But however, I went into that Scottish Boys knowing that I was probably the most prepared player in the field. I had worked so hard that winter, because it was going to be my last Scottish Boys, and genuinely I was out in all sorts of weather down in Ayrshire, hitting balls every day, pitching, putting, doing everything. And as I say, although I was playing off 4 going into that event, it probably didn't reflect how I was actually playing and what sort of place I was in. And I played great that week, and went on to win the Scottish Boys, and incidentally I beat Ewan McIntosh in the final. Ewan's been a great friend of mine ever since that day. Ewan was the big favourite. So it was a bit of an upset with the media and Scottish Golf Union at the time. Who's this 4 handicap golfer that's just come and won the Scottish Boys? But it wasn't a huge surprise to me. As I say, the work that I'd put in, paid off, and just proves to show you that, a few months later I was actually playing off +3. So I went into the Scottish Boys playing off 4, and a few months later I'd reduced my handicap by 7. And so all that great work had been really done, put me in a great place.
So on the back of that success, you ended up having or going for a scholarship in the United States of America. And tell us a little bit about who was influential in getting you that at that time.
Yeah, well, winning the Scottish Boys meant that I was then going to go and represent Scotland playing in the Doug Saunders European Championships, which used to be played in 4 continents, Asia, Australasia, North America and Europe. And the week that I get invited to play in the European Doug Saunders, it was in Kings Links, Aberdeen. So I was in the glamorous Kings Links. So ended up, I won the Doug Saunders junior event that week, and then in the European, you qualify the following week to play in the World Boys Championship. So I was actually representing Europe in the World Junior Championship in '86 at Kings Links, and went on to win that. And Doug Saunders, who famously missed the small putt to win the Open in 1970, he was there the whole week. I mean, what a character. I mean, he engaged with the kids and the parents all week. It was absolutely fantastic. End of the fortnight, when I'd won the his tournament, the European and the World Kids, Mr. Saunders took me and my mum and dad aside and said, look, I really think the next stage for you is to go to America on a golf scholarship. And I was only 17 at the time. I'd from home, and it was a massive thing. And he said, look, if you want to go down that route, I'll arrange it, and I'll arrange to get all the costs covered for you as well. So within 3 months, I was away to a place called Paris Junior College, which was in Texas, just outside Dallas. And I spent 2 very happy years there, became their #1 player, and ended up a degree in, a diploma in journalism, which was fantastic, that I really enjoyed. So an amazing 2 years, and sadly, Mr. Saunders passed away just last week there. A wonderful career, but unfortunately he'll always be remembered for missing a 3-foot putt, which is it's not nice, considering he was runner-up in 4 majors, finished 4th in the Masters, did an amazing work for charity and put an awful lot into junior golf as well. So he'll be sadly missed, one of the great characters of the game, but I'll always be indebted to him for my 2 years I had in the States.
Yeah, a truly wonderful man, and will be sadly missed around golf. So you came back from the States and you decided to turn pro in 1990. You played on the Tartan Tour for 7 years, being very successful on the Tartan Tour. But during that period, you obviously set your sights a little bit higher. When you played on the Tartan Tour, what made you think that you had what it took to ultimately get where you got, which was a European Tour card in 1997?
Yeah, I mean, my whole life at that time sort of revolved around the Tartan Tour, Richard, playing in Pro-Ams and Scottish Championship, Northern Opens and everything, and that was making me a living at that time. But you're right, the bigger picture for me was always getting on the European Tour, and during that 7 years playing the Tartan Tour, I mean, I did go for my European Tour card every year, and failed miserably every year. It's so tough to get your European Tour cards. It's a lot tougher when it was a little bit easier, 40 cards. So it was tough then. It's brutal now. And then in '96, after 6 years of trying, I did actually get my card. So that was a dream come true. I'm now on the European Tour. I've been dreaming of this moment for many, many years. And I'm quite embarrassed, Richard, when I look back, because I genuinely, the day I got my card that day at San Roque down in Spain, I stupidly really thought at the time, that's it. I've made it. I'm going to have this amazing lifestyle. I'm going to make millions. I'm going to travel all around the world. I'm going to have an amazing career. And I'm really embarrassed when I look back at that, because, my foot wasn't even in the first rung of the ladder at that point. I've got my card. Yeah, well done, Alan. But the work starts now. You're now going to be competing against the greatest players in the world, who are a lot more experienced than you, and you've got a lot still to learn. But naively, I just thought it was just going to be a shooty in, that you'll play in a lot of tournaments, make a lot of money, and you'll be on tour for many, many years. And it's is that a regret? It's not a regret. I was young and I didn't know any better, and it might have been better at the time had I had more people around me to sort of give me better advice. But I kind of just went on my own and tried to crack on, which was, looking back now, was the wrong thing to do. But a wonderful experience, don't get me wrong. I played 16 events in the European Tour, missed 11 cuts, made 5 cuts. I think my biggest check was £3,500. But all that said, Richard, it was an amazing experience. Played with some great players, saw some great places in the world, got on the telly a couple of times, which was fantastic, and just great memories. But you know, I was out my depth a wee bit. I'll be honest with you.
Well, it's an interesting story, and I think, you know, that is everybody's dream, and you've managed to get there. So, no, fair play to anybody that's got a tour card for any length of time. So, when you came back from tour, you decided to try and get yourself into golf course management, involved in hotels, and you were at Deer Park in Dalmahoy, which is just around the Edinburgh area. But you're now a golfing junior. You're the regional director for golfing, which is a junior specific golf pathway and equipment brand. Just briefly tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's been a little change in my career, Richard. As you say, for the last 20 odd years, I've been very much in golf management, direct roles, general manager roles, and just I joined golfing probably about this time last year, and fantastic company based in Ayrshire, and yeah, you're right that the 3 areas that we are sort of focused on is making award-winning equipment for kids, sort of primarily sort of 4 to 14-year-old. We do a golf and education program at primary schools, and we also do a My Pathway to Golf program, which is an amazing junior program that's all done through an app, and it really engages the coaches, the parents, and the children, and the kids can do skills tests at home. They can come to the club under the watchful eye of the professional, etc. And it's absolutely fantastic. We're really having a lot of success around the country with it. We actually launched the app in January at the PGA show in Florida, and we really had a lot of momentum going on the back of that, and things were really on a crest of a wave. And then unfortunately coronavirus hit in, and things have all sort of grinded to a halt a little bit. But even now we're still engaging with the kids every day. We're getting the kids to send us videos that they've been doing games out in the garden. We're giving out weekly competitions, etc. Just trying to keep the kids engaged through this period, because we don't want them losing that momentum. And then, you know, people like yourself will benefit, where the kids are buzzing to go again in 3 or 4 months, and they'll get back to the local golf course and get their pros doing their junior program. So it's really, really enjoying it, really exciting, and it's lovely for somebody like me to see the wee smiles on the junior faces, and you feel as if you're putting a bit back into the game, which is great.
Brilliant, and we've talked about this. We're going to get involved in it when we're out of this virus situation that we're in. It says you're also an after-dinner speaker and radio commentator. Just tell me, as you did the BBC Radio, which is at the Open and the Scottish Open, tell me a funny story, if you have, about doing the radio commentary.
Oh, I've had loads of funny stories, Richard, but I think my favourite ones, I have to say, is a very bittersweet moment, and it was when Tom Watson nearly won the Open at Turnberry, 2011, I think it was, 59-year-old, and I'm in the group with him coming down the 18th, and he's got a 4 to win the Open, 59-year-old, and the emotion around Turnberry that day was incredible. The atmosphere was unbelievable, and you know, he had a 4 to win the Open, and I remember standing up at the green, and I see his second shot coming in. He's hit a fantastic tee shot, split the middle of the fairway, and then he's hit a great 7 or 8 iron for his second shot, and I'm looking at it there and I'm thinking, that's absolutely perfect. And when the ball landed on the green, you actually heard a noise as if it had hit a bit of concrete. He just hit the hardest part on that green. I remember the thud of that ball, the noise it made, and the ball just kept running and kept running. I'm thinking, please stop, please stop. Trickles over the back, and where his ball actually finished, he got absolutely robbed. I mean, he ended up against the collar of the semi-rough. Had he been a couple inches in front of the collar, it was a putt, or if he'd been a couple inches over the collar, he would have to chip it. But it was almost like the cue ball been stuck under the cushion at snooker or pool, and it was that awkward one. and he tried to putt it, and you know, it was heartbreaking. It was absolutely heartbreaking. I mean, I was really emotional because I maintain to this day that if Watson had got up and down in two there in my lifetime, arguably that was the greatest sporting moment in history. Not even in golf, the greatest sporting moment. A 59-year-old man winning the Open, and he went to the playoff holes, and we were with BBC Radio Scotland covering the playoff. And honestly, Richard, we walked onto the first playoff hole, and I looked at him, and the guy had aged 10 years in about 40 minutes. And there was no way he was winning that playoff. It was, you know, he'd done his best, but, you know, Stuart Sink went on to win it, and Stuart Sink famously went into the press, the media tent after it. We were all sitting there, and first question, how do you feel? And he turned around and he said, I feel like bad Santa. and you know, and that's how we all saw him as well. But I had a wee bit, I did a lot of sympathy for Stuart Sink as well. He's just won the Open. And yeah, it'll always be kind of remembered, the one that Watson nearly won, you know. But it was an amazing week, that, and watching Watson nearly winning the Open at that age was just incredible. But that last hole was just heartbreaking, the way it happened. And we were in a bar that night in Ayr with the rest of the BBC team, having a few beers, and we're staying down that night. And I don't normally take the bait. I hear a lot of stupid comments in my life. And I'm standing in a pub, and I heard this muppet behind me saying, "Oh, did you see Watson blew the Open today?" And as I say, I don't normally, but I was this close to absolutely lamping one in this boy, just the way I was feeling. But
Alan, can you just tell me about your greatest ever round of golf or game of golf? Just give us a little bit of a chat about it.
Well, I think most people that know me, Richard, will know the answer to this. And it was actually in 1994. I was playing in the Scottish Daily Express Pro-Am, which was a 4-day event over Burnside, Panmure and the championship course at Carnoustie. And I had played Burnside and Panmure the first 2 days, and I actually had a 3 or 4 shot lead. And I went to the championship course on the third day, and I think me and all my fellow pros thought that'll come back to the field a wee bit, because the other pros on the least difficult courses, they were out there, and I'm on the big course that day. So that was fine. And I remember we were on the Hogan tees, the championship tees, and away I went, and I got off to a great start. I remember I was 4 under after 6, and I remember standing the 7th thinking, fantastic, I might break 75 round here today, because that's what Carnoustie's like. You're just waiting for it to jump up and grab you. But fortunately, the good golf continued, and ended up, I made a great par 4 at the last to shoot 64, 8 under par, which I was the first guy ever to shoot 64. The record before that was Jack Newton and Tom Watson, who'd shot 65 in 1975 at the Open. So it was an amazing day. And you know, and people have often asked me, Richard, you know, did you do anything stupid that day? Did you hold bunker shots? Did you chip in? Did you hold big long putts? And I hate this sounding big-headed, and I don't mean it to be, but I really never, you know, the biggest putt hold or the longest putt hold that day was about 12 or 14 feet. I drove the ball great, and my approach shots were great that day, my iron play, and I hit them in good, and I really just took my chances. I mean, it's how top golf should be played, but it doesn't happen very often to any of us. So as I say, it was just an amazing day, and took my chances, and that was it. And you know, I had that record for 23 years, and in 2017 it was beaten eventually in the Dunhill Links by none other than a Mr. Tommy Fleetwood, which you know, listen, it genuinely doesn't bother me. I say I had 23 years, kicked the backside out of being the course record holder for 23 years. And then for somebody like him, you know, a Ryder Cup star, he's British, he seems like a good guy, for him to come along and beat it, I had no problem with. And actually, I'm going to share this with you. So a month after Tommy beat my court, now I've never met Tommy Fleetwood, but he's quite active, him and his wife are quite active on social media. And long story short, they got in touch with friends of mine, And I came back to my flat in Leith one day about a month after, and this was sitting in my postbox for me. And if you can see it there, it's a signed photograph from Tommy Fleetwood, and at the top there it just says, "Alan, sorry for your loss," and a wee smiley face. So that's hanging up in my flat there. But I thought that was brilliant, and he's been a hero of mine ever since. So it was really great of him to take the time to do that, and I've been a big fan of him ever since, despite him taking my record away.
So from that, the fact that you were such an expert around the big course at Carnoustie, what led to the next event that you're going to tell us about? Tell us about what happened after that.
Yeah. Well, I shot the course record in '94, and 12 months later, the Scottish Open, which, as you know, is a massive event, it was going to Carnoustie in '95, and I was lying top 3 in the Tartan Tour Order of Merit at that point. And if you were in the top 3, you got into 2 or 3 big events like the Scottish Open, the BMW at Wentworth. So 12 months later, I'm back at Carnoustie, which was fantastic, and I put my name up for a practice round on the Tuesday at 11:31. Never forget that time. And I'm standing there at 11:31, and the next thing, the starter said to me, "You maybe want to hang about for 5 minutes." And I says, "Why?" And he says, "Well, there's 2 guys have put their name up next to you. You might want to hang about to see if they actually come." And I says, "Well, who is it?" And he said, "Well, one's a Ben Crenshaw, who had just won the Masters that year and one of my all-time heroes. And he says, the other one's this T Woods that everybody's talking about." I'm like, away you go. And I thought the whole thing was a wind-up. And 10 minutes later, the next thing, there was a lot of people start milling around the first tee, and the stands at the first started filling up. And I'm thinking, oh, God, is this really happening? And sure enough, 10 minutes later, out walks the crowd. The Masters champion, Ben Crenshaw, comes over and introduces himself and introduces me to Tiger. And Crenshaw said to me that day, I believe you shot 64 round here last year. Do you mind if we play with you? And I'm like, oh, let me have a minute to think about that, Mr. Masters champion. And that was it. We teed off, and John Reeves, the professional at Glasgow, John was in the 4-ball that day as well. So John and I actually had a little game with Crenshaw and Tiger holed about a 10-foot on the last to beat us, and took a 5er off us, which so that was fine. But an amazing day, playing with Tiger was probably 20 at that time, and I was asked that day by, it was either Martin Dempster or Jock McVicker, one of the journalists, what I thought about this new kid Tiger Woods, and I've still got the newspaper article somewhere, and I'd actually said that I thought I said he was sensational. I've never seen him hit the ball like that. I've never heard a noise come off the club face like that before. And I said, in my opinion, I think he'll win 3 or 4 majors. And that was my prediction at the time. So little did I know he was going to go on to do what he did. And 18 months later, he wins the Masters by 12, having shot 40 in the front 9 of the first day. So the rest is history. But I knew he was good, but I never realised, 15 majors later good. It was just amazing. But I was more intimidated, actually, Richard, playing with Crenshaw, because he was the Masters champion. He was always a hero of mine, and we didn't know an awful lot about Tiger. But looking back now, it is surreal to think that I played 18 holes with Crenshaw and Tiger over Carnoustie, having shot the course record there a year before. A bit bizarre, can't really make it up, and sometimes I have to pinch myself that it actually happened, but in a nice way.
Alan, what a wonderful story to finish the interview on. I really, really enjoyed it. So I hope that all the members at Bruntsfield enjoyed it, and we'll send this out on Twitter and Facebook so other people can watch it as well. Alan, thank you very, very much. Stay safe. We will speak soon. Take care and look after yourself, and I hope we all get through this absolutely fine. Okay, take care.
Thanks, Richard. You too, and we hope to be back at the Pro-Am at Bruntsfield maybe next year. That would be amazing.
Brilliant. Top man. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Cheers.